Hello everyone, and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. I read the second book in Robin Hobb's Life Ship Traders, Mad Ship or The Mad Ship. My edition is without the. I read this one together with Nev from Nev's book channel. Nev had already started when I was reading the last couple of hundred pages of the first book, Ship of Magic. But eventually I caught up with him. We exchanged our thoughts on the book through email. It is so much fun to see how two people reading the same text can have different experiences. From Nev's notes, I gathered that he was mainly interested in what would happen next with the story and the characters, while my main focus was to find out about the history of it all. Like, what truly happened to Paragon, the discarded life ship? It was clear that there was more to his story. Or what about Amber, the woodcarver? She also remains shrouded in mystery. Same thing goes for Captain Kennet, the most contradictory character in the entire trilogy. Is he a good person or a bad person? And why is that so? What's his history? That is what makes a buddy read so much fun. You enrichen one another with observations or hunches and wild guesses. On October 28, immediately after Ship of Magic, I started reading The Mad Ship, and I finished the book on November 10. For Nev, it had been some time since he had read the first book, so for him it took a couple of chapters to remember again who the characters were. I myself wondered why the author repeated so much of what was plainly known already. Obviously that is done to help readers who have been away from the story for some time. I will subdivide this reading experience into a couple of chapters to make it look as if I know what I'm talking about. Nothing scientific here, just some random observations I made. Dosage. Not only is Robin Hobb a master at character writing, she's also very good at dosage, or dosing, whatever you want to call it. Throughout the whole trilogy, at the time I am making this video, I have finished reading book 3. She reveals only so much of the story, plot and background to keep the reader intrigued. Nowhere does that spoon-feeding of information turn into a slog, or did it make me lose my interest in the book. The sequences of the sea serpents are captivating from the beginning, even though I had no idea why they were in the story at all for a long time. It is lines like these from the prologue of The Mad Ship that keep the reader invested. Do not more and more of us forget that we are meant to be masters? Slowly but surely the reader understands that there is a connection between those mysterious wizardwood logs in the underground city in the Rain Wilds, the snakes, and the life ships. For spoiler reasons, I cannot go into this, of course. Not 1 second had I any doubt that Hobb would clarify all these connections. Like I also didn't doubt I would learn more about the true background of the Elderlings the overall series is named after. From the first trilogy, Farseer, we had gathered something of the nature of these Elderlings, but as it turns out at the end of the Life Ship Traders, we didn't know half of it. And we still don't. All of this fascinates me so much that I simply have to keep on reading. High-quality prose. Hobb's prose is one of the highest quality within the genre. Take this line when Brashen talks about his father. The way my father feels about me, he wouldn't piss on me if I was on fire. If it weren't this shocking, it would be very funny. One of the main characters, Althea, ponders about the man she cares for. Whenever she thought she had weeded him from her memory, the leaves of that interlude unfurled again. That's a beautiful line. Another beautiful sentence. A shared touch, skin to skin, can speak the words our mouths are not free to say. During a sea conquest, one of the pirates battles the captain of the other ship. Death was dancing between them. This is the kind of prose I love to read. Many of the dialogues express the exact emotion I felt at that point in the story, like when Althea speaks strongly to the petulant and spoiled Malta. You need to stop behaving like a hysterical girl with the brains of a chicken. There is only a handful of elements within the prose I didn't like that much. Hobb prefers fancy wording sometimes. The one that stood out for me is lackadaisically. Maybe that's not a fancy word for native English-speaking people at all, but to me it is unusual, and she uses it multiple times. Another thing that got on my nerves a little is this recurring, fully written word not in some of the dialogue. Why did not we get that log cut up before he came back? Just why didn't we would have been fine here. But because not is written in full, it sounds overdone to my ears and obviously intended to sound formal and fantasy-y. She does that many times, and each time I tripped over those sentences. I also stumbled upon a couple of editing mistakes. At page 459 of my edition, it says, "When she had first learned of her father's abduction, it had seemed exciting and fraught with tragedy. She had thrown herself into exploiting the situation to the limit of its theatrical possibilities." Then, only 3 pages later, on 462, "When she had first heard that her father was taken, it hadn't seemed real. She had used it as an opportunity to indulge her sense of the tragic. She had play-acted the role of a stricken daughter." Any good editor would have eliminated one of the two or would have mixed them up into one. Another one, on page 813. "His father had heard the music and worked the city anyway, until the day they found him sitting in the dark, surrounded by small cubes of black stone." Then, after one sentence, it says, "When they found him, he was sitting in the darkness, stacking blocks like a great babe." To me, that is sloppy editing. Turns out that Nev didn't have this mistake in his edition, which was published in 2000. There it says, "His father had heard the music and worked the city anyway until the day they found him sitting in the dark, surrounded by small cubes of black stone that he was stacking around him like a great babe." So here the two separate lines are mixed into one. Apparently in Nev's edition, this edit had been included. But thankfully, these are truly very minor wrinkles in the otherwise flawless prose. Take, for instance, these words. Someone speaks to Etta. "You shine. There is something about you, Etta. Something in you that cannot be quenched by hardship or ill-treatment. Your soul gleams like silver beneath a patina of heart-use." That's beautiful. During a council of traders, which is going round in circles, someone says, "Please, traders, let us not retread ground we have already packed into bricks." Character work. Some of the characters at first glance seem to be a bit one-dimensional, like the satrap or satrap Cosgo. He starts out as pretty flat and one-sided, but having read all 3 books now, I know that even this spoiled little brat undergoes some development, which gives him much more depth. Hobb skillfully uses the so-called monologue intérieur to paint her characters, offering us the insights into the workings of their mind. On top of that, she lets other characters observe others. Like this observation from Ronica. Malta's grandmother considers her grandchild this giddy girl. Even more frightening was that those awkward hands were greedy and grasping, and that Malta's foolishness was fueled by cunning. The way the character of Malta develops in this book and in Ship of Destiny, for me, is the best example of Hobb's mastery in that department. From spoiled, demanding, and manipulative, she grows into a wise, superior negotiator. When Malta approaches a young man she's had her eye on for some time, she experiences the whole thing as perfect, a minstrel's romantic tale. She was the heroine, the young woman wronged by fate and her family. Beautiful, young and heartbroken over her father's captivity. She stood still in the fickle moonlight, savouring the drama of it all. Hobb paints the daydreaminess of Malta so convincing. She is still a child, living inside the bubble of her fantasy world, which has not yet been disrupted by true pain or hardship. Malta is growing up, and with each page she becomes more interesting. "Mother, Do you ever look at yourself and wonder if there's someone else inside? Sometimes I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not the silly little girl I was last summer, all in a hurry to grow up. When I try to think who I really am, all I feel is tired and somewhat sad in a way that doesn't have tears. Also, that final choice of words, in a way that doesn't have tears, is so beautiful. By the way, the entire search for one's self, one's true identity, is one of the main themes throughout the entire trilogy. Hobb manages to provoke strong emotions in the reader. I really hated Kyle Haven, and Wintrow, Althea's nephew, became increasingly irritating for me with his half-heartedness and lack of spine. Although that, of course, would not do this character justice, because he most certainly has some very strong moments throughout the story. Ultimately, not one of the characters is one-dimensional, predictable, or without flaws. Also, Kenneth keeps on being an enigma. Until far into the trilogy, it remains undecided whether he is a bad guy, despite his tendency to do good, or if it's the other way around. His multiple layers are revealed at the very end. Another of the many examples of great character work is when Althea is in a dialogue with a man who has just confessed that he loves her. She tried to move her mouth to say she loved him too, but the lie wouldn't come. Odd. She had not known it would be a lie until she tried to speak the words. So good. Wisdom. In the books I read, I'm always on the lookout for wisdom, and the mad ship does not disappoint. Another of those intriguing characters, Etta, says somewhere, "Accept your life and you might survive it. If you hold back from it, insisting this is not your life, not where you are meant to be, life will pass you by." Etta has been mocked by life in her work as a whore. When someone makes her an honest and beautiful compliment, she, not used at all to this kind of gallantry, stares at him, sorting the words to see if they held an insult. Another line I feel resonating deep inside of me. The wise man takes the shortest path to peace with himself. I can see much wisdom in the way Althea attempts to open the eyes of a befriended trader who is trader first and foremost. Right and wrong is not profit and loss. Some things are too evil to make money from them. Writing skills. It is almost impossible to show you in a spoiler-free review the expertise of Robin Hobb as a writer, but I can give it a try. I always appreciate it when a writer implicitly refers to something that was said earlier in the story, like an Easter egg. In a previous video, I already quoted how Hobb in the first book describes Amber's artistry as a woodcarver. The leaping dolphin bead could only have been a dolphin. There was no berry, no cat, no apple hiding in that bit of wood. Only the dolphin had been there, and only Amber could have found it and brought it out of concealment. These words are echoed here in The Mad Ship when several of Amber's wooden beads are described. An apple. The next was a pear, and the next was a cat, its tail curled around its body. The apple and the cat, mentioned in Book 1, apparently had been hiding in another piece of wood. Hobb has a gift of dragging the reader into a scene or into the inner workings of a character. There are pretty heavy scenes where I could almost feel the excruciating pain a character experiences myself, whether physically or mentally. Hobb also excels in the otherworldly. That undefinable space between life and death is what she captures extremely well, something she had already shown in the Farseer trilogy. One of the characters in The Mad Ship undergoes a near-death experience. I've read several books about NDEs, and this description is very plausible. That part is definitely one of the highlights for me in this book. Never before had he comprehended how cramped a man's thoughts were when confined to a mere body. This, a brief touch with death, happens to other characters as well, and each time it was a highlight in the book for me. Feminism. One of the strong elements in the mateship, which is present in the whole trilogy, is the feminism within many of the female characters. Regarding one of her possible suitors, Althea says, "No, I don't want to be the wind in his sails. That's what I want someone else to do for me." To which Amber says that there is nothing wrong with wanting that, as long as you're male. I very much enjoyed this feminist motive throughout the entire trilogy. Sometimes it comes forward in dialogues, and here I find it in the voice of a female character revealed later on in the story. She talks about Rain. "Don't be foolish. He's only a male. You and I, we are queens. We are destined to master our males. It's the proper balance of the world." What starts as a tender moment between two characters turns sour. "When we move together like this," she whispered shyly, "I almost feel we are destined to always move as one." Which the young man spoils by saying, "All you have to do, my dear, is trust me to lead you in your steps." His words truly sit wrong with her. Here is that feministic motive again, where many of the female characters reject the notion that they can only flourish at the hand of a male. And more. The dominant religion in this trilogy is that to Sa, whose gender remains a mystery. It has many elements that speak to me, like this one. Destiny is not reserved for a few chosen ones. Each man has a destiny. If a man can believe it, then he can know he is as important as any other man. He can also know that he is no more important than any other is. It creates a vast equality of purpose. Sa's philosophy also seems to embrace reincarnation, which always interests me. Or perhaps in this case, it's more like living another life in a different form. Sa is in all life is in Sa. No end, his words promised her. Life did not end. After thought, she found she shared his conviction. No final blackness to fear, no sudden stopping of being. Changes and mutations, yes, but those things went on with every breath. Changes were the essence of life. One should not dread change. Later on in the book it says, "It's all a circle that turns. Nothing stops, nothing is lost, and it all goes spiraling on." After closing the final page, number 850 of the mateship, I immediately wanted to continue with the story in the third book. That one kept me busy for 11 days. Nev decided to take a break from the series, but sometime in 2026 he will also pick up book 3. Thanks, Nev, for this buddy read. It's been great fun. I always say that each book in a trilogy or in any series should be better than the previous one. Book number 2 in the Lifeship Traders lives up to that expectation. I gave it 95 points out of 100, 1 point more than Ship of Magic. Still, just 1 point shy of a true 5-star book. Watch out for my reading experience of Ship of Destiny, the closing volume in the trilogy. See if that one indeed is the best of the bunch. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again, at Dutch Greybeard.